Welcome to the creature design process video. First of all, I want to say thank you for your support throughout this campaign. It's been a bit of a wild ride, but I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. So what I like to do when I'm world building is to give myself tasks. So it's not unlike, an environment where you're doing work for hire, but you're doing work for yourself. Tasks give you goals and parameters, which are both helpful in keeping you efficient and on track if you are working on a larger project. So for this particular task, I'm looking at the Bobbit Cat that I designed for this Kickstarter. And the goals are to make another creature like the Bobbit Cat that is from the same world, that feels similarly in the same style and the same vein. Kind of fancy, very monstery as opposed to creaturey. And incorporating other animals outside of the bobbit worm into this amalgamation. One of the important things with creature design is making sure you have good reference. So when you're assembling, just keep in mind certain things that you're looking for as far as silhouettes, interesting shapes, interesting patterns. Throw it all in a folder. Pure Ref is great for it. I like to have my reference in my PSD files half the time. I'll take you through this reference that I put together really quick in order to point out the things that I'm looking at. So in the far corner, I've got that nice bobbit head-on shot, and it's got this really cool silhouette that's kind of butterfly-like. In the middle of the page, you've got that squiggly line, that lateral line that goes down the bobbit's side. To the right of that, you have that really nice two-jaw shape with this lip under it, and it has all these little weird crevices and interesting shapes within that. And so that's one of the things that I'll be looking at, when I'm working on defining different pieces of this creature. Next up under it is this side shot of the bobbit's head with its jaws pulled in, and it's got this weird sandwormy shape with multiple smaller shapes in it, and it's just this very interesting silhouette and interesting feeling of weight when it's got everything kind of sucked in and it's got its little tentacle things poking out, and it's a really just interesting. Now lampreys are cool. I really like this shape, that tubular shape with the kind of indented ridges on it. They have a neat dark to light gradient, and I really like those fins on top. The hagfish was especially attractive. It just has this nice soft fleshy body, which is really, really fun to play with, and then it's got those awesome white spots and this purple pink gradient, so I definitely want to tap into some of that color and some of that fleshiness. The picture under it with the hagfish head, how those jaw pads kind of sit underneath all the little tentacles and how the folds kind of fall over its face, all really, really cool elements that I could put into this creature design. And then last up, back to some of the lampreys, just picking out some of the smaller shapes and angles and perspective. And then that last guy with the pattern on it. It's a really cool pattern. I love mottled, cryptic, just funky patterns. And the shape of its face is pretty awesome where it is suctioned onto the rock. So let's take a look at the bobbit designs. They're based around heavy forequarters with a tapering back end, a low slung neck and head, to accentuate that feeling of weight, an eyeless face. There's a decent combination of skin and segmentation where it seems to have a certain kind of shiny texture. And then it's got a bunch of dealy bobs, lots of dealy bobs. Okay, with all that in mind, let us begin. So I usually start by roughing out just a general body shape. This is more lion-y, then I start going into something a little more cat-like and slender. I'm not really sure if I want to do a bobbit cousin, like a bigger cousin, a smaller cousin. It's still a lot of playing around at this point. I just need to make something that looks like it's in the same world. It doesn't necessarily have to be related to the Bobbit Cat. It just has to look like it belongs. So this silhouette is looking kind of nice. It's got some frilled edges at the top of the neck. It's kind of reminiscent to a creature that I've done in the past, so I'm not sure if I want to go that direction. Put the nice bobbit, jaws on it, and tried to put some hagfish teeth on the bottom. I do like that jaw setup. So I take a minute to look at the ref again, try to think about how that jaw would close, just scribble something out. Doesn't have to be super legible as long as you can come back to it later and say, hey, I remember what I was thinking here, and it's either a great idea or a not so great idea. And that's kind of the whole point of gestures, is to put all your ideas out on paper and see if they work or not, see how well they do once they're lined up with a bunch of other ideas. So try not to get too caught up in details. Don't worry about figuring everything out. At this stage, I usually just focus on silhouette and how it might move and just broad level design stuff. There's no use in figuring out how many fingers it has at this stage. Small details can come later as you refine it. So this is the first gesture done of what this creature could look like. I think it's okay. It's more monstery than I'd probably like it to be. It's not too impactful. I'm seeing some good things in it that have potential, but I'm not sold on this particular design itself. With that said, I'm moving on to the second design, and this one I want to emphasize the heavy 4/4. Kind of a lengthy body, but not as much as the Bobbit Cat. I do want to get the low slung neck and head and maybe emphasize this hump over the shoulder. Give it that feeling of weight. So you can imagine it kind of prowling, and it's like super supple, like kind of like a lion. And don't be afraid to spend some time on your gestures. They don't all have to be 30 seconds long. You take the time to figure out what you're going for. I like the shorter legs, thicker body. It'd be really cool if the bobbit jaws kind of sunk inside the neck and were hidden. So I'm kind of beefing up the body right now, figuring out, thinking about how it would move and how the weight would be distributed. And it's looking less and less supple like a lion and more heavier, more weighty. It's going to have to be a little more measured. I want to put that nice hagfish fleshiness into that tail, make it pretty long. The flow's looking pretty good in this sketch. It's always nice when your gestures have a strong flow of motion or line of action. Really helps to be able to sell the idea. You can kind of translate some of the disposition of the creature, ahead of time before figuring everything out. So you get this general perspective of, do I want it to be brutish? Do I want it to be slinky? There's different general things that you can determine from how you pose the animal. So I spent quite a bit more time on this particular gesture than I did on the first one. I think I was able to determine pretty quickly that the first one wasn't really what I was after. The second one, there's a lot of good things going for it. I really like the silhouette. It's really basic right now. Just figuring out different aspects of the very base form. So for the sake of argument, even though I really like that second one, I'm going to start a third one just to give some variety and explore a different kind of body shape. Started with the silhouette that I really like, that butterfly, sharp, pointy silhouette. Thinking maybe I can combine more cat back into it, maybe have the teeth at the top and then some hagfish stuff at the bottom. Wasn't really liking that look because it seemed almost, silhouette-wise, too Asian dragon. And that's not what I'm after here. So I tried a different silhouette with maybe some lamprey, hooked teeth, that beak on the end, the bobbit jaw shape. Looking more at the sandworm shapes this time, seeing if I can get something that sort of emulates that weird weightiness, like hanging off of a long neck. So I gave this one a go, and it just not really working for me. I tried a couple different things and decided to give that one up and start over. So the great thing about gestures is it's way more efficient to start over with gestures than to build a whole rendered piece and then try to make changes from there. So on to the next try of this third design. This time I'm going for something a little sprightlier, maybe leaner, maybe longer. Forelegs are still pretty large definitely more bendy. Kind of looks like fur in the back, which I'm not too keen on. I don't like those sails. So let's start again. Something different. Try to get the hagfish shapes. Try to get some of the sandworm shapes. Get the tentacles poking out and hanging down. Maybe get the fins lined up. I like this body shape a lot better. This is more standard cat, lion-ish. You know, nothing too heavy, nothing too crazy. Kind of feels too bland, to be honest. I like those leg shapes, but, you know, too bland is too bland. So we'll put that aside, and we'll work on this one, kind of making it accentuated. Get some other silhouettes in there. Change up the bobbit jaws, make them more stylized. Make the forelegs a little more angled, so you get kind of a crouching posture. Maybe make the body longer. Kind of thinking more hagfish now, like maybe make it more tubular, more, you know, wrinkly and fleshy, but too long. I think it is too long, so I will shorten it. That seems like a good balance between forelegs and back legs. Adjust the head. Try to make the neck balance out with the rest of it. Put the fins back on there and kind of taper them off down the side. I do really like the jaws idea, you know, sticking with the bobbit jaws on top and the hagfish jaws on the bottom with some palatine teeth. Not really sure what that's going to look like. It might have the lamprey, you know, inner teeth on it. It might just be more hagfish teeth. I haven't decided yet. And that's okay. You don't have to decide everything at the moment with the gestures. You know, it's just a process of working through the problem and figuring it out as you go. In this one, I'm decking out in a lot of frilly stuff. I'm not sure that it adds that much to the initial silhouette, to be honest. I do like the raggedy trailing fins that go down the neck. Adding some other accoutrements throughout the body, maybe having those side tendrils kind of loop up and cover part of the shoulder. Playing with the thickness of the neck and the thickness of the shoulders. Seeing how much layered folds and flesh looks, you know. And what can balance what as far as details. Because this is also the stage, you know, once you get your base body forms down, where you start to balance out the larger details and within the design. So now we have 3 pretty solid gestures, 3 different ideas of, you know, what this creature could look like, and now we have to choose one. So initially I chose the third one, thinking that would be pretty good, you know, to fit in that world, and I just made a sparkle dog version of the bobbit worm, so and so, you know, even though that one was a fail, I learned quite a bit about what I was expecting from this design, and I think number 2 is actually going to be the one that does the job. So what I'm going to do with this one is build out the shapes a little more, try to figure out those larger deets within the design, and try to change the silhouette up a bit so that it's not quite so basic, and to add a lot of the features that the initial Bobbit Cat had. So there's some consistency between the 2 designs, but not so much that it's outlandish. So I'm wrapping this one up, and I'm feeling pretty good about it. It doesn't seem entirely solid in the way I like to see things solid, but it's got a lot of potential, and I think I can work with it and bring it to final, or at least the next pass. So for the next pass, I usually try to clarify a lot of stuff with the line work. I usually put it on a low opacity layer and then work on the land art over top. So part of the important thing with gestures is being able to clearly and concisely convey what you need to be able to take the next step, to be able to clarify those details, or to be able to come back, you know, a year or 2 or more, depending on what personal art time you have, and look at it and come back to that train of thought that you were having when you made the gesture. They're kind of like notes that you leave for yourself, you know, when you're having a conversation for yourself over a long period of time, you know, especially if you're working freelance or working a studio job and you only have so much time to work on your own projects. It's really important that you set aside time for your own playing around. But that ends up being very fractured a lot of the time. 30 minutes here, 20 minutes there, a weekend here. So in order to bridge those gaps, it's great to be able to put down really fast what you need to be able to convey a thought or a design, and then come back to it and be able to build upon that without too much trouble. This can help keep up morale as well, keep art block at bay, being able to jump from task to task and kind of build those small wins, kind of solve those small problems that you enjoy solving, that you have control over. So still working on clarifying this guy, thinking about where I'm going to put the long dealy bobs, possibly at the end of the jaws, which is kind of where you don't expect them to be. You can expect them to be more forward, but the jaws go back so far on the neck. Adds a lot of weight to the forequarters as well, just bulking up that mass, making it feel heavier, and complements the nice rigid edges of the fins. I wasn't too sold on the half moon type fins, or something that's too round. I think some fold over will add some character to it, help with the jaggedness without making them too ragged, and bring some visual interest into the design. Kind of give them a little bit more flex and bend. Alright, looks pretty good. We're going to go into color pass. So I'm color picking from that pink purple hagfish and grabbing some pattern from that lamprey, because that's a really nice model pattern that I said I was going to come back to. So I typically do a fill layer and then work over top it with child layer and just use the gradient tool and the lasso tool to kind of block in which colors I'm after. Start to differentiate where the lighting's going to hit. The lasso tool is great for that. It gives you nice hard edges, and you can kind of soften some of those with any kind of chalk brush or pastel brush or airbrush. I usually use a couple different brushes. Most are standard, but the lasso tool and the gradient tool is my go-to for blocking in different colors. So again, he doesn't need to be super detailed at this stage. I don't usually take things to final full illustration level unless I'm really sold on what it is I'm working on. So right now I'm just trying to figure out basic understanding of how this is colored and textured and what he might look like. So I usually start by working up the color layers on the base body, just figuring out what those base tones are, because it's much easier to put on a complicated pattern after that. And usually when I grab a swatch of pattern, I'll desaturate it and put it on overlay and then possibly paint over that. But I played with a couple different options here. Kind of warped it around, see how it's fitting on the creature. I don't want the whole thing to be covered in pattern, but I want a good chunk of it to be covered in pattern. And I like this particular contrast with this weird red, pink, kind of black. And here's where the lasso tool comes in really handy. It is really excellent for making crazy patterns. It does involve a lot of drawing, and then you just swipe the gradient tool over it and you can just get these nice hard edges, which then you can use, you can go to the filter menu and use a Gaussian blur on it to kind of fade it and make it match, whatever photo reference you're working on. And then using that as a base, you can go in and paint over and give it some more color differentiation, more purples and pinks, more oranges and spots. It's just kind of a process of making that texture work on the animal. So I think it'd be worth it to do a couple different color passes on this one. I'm pretty sold on this pattern. It could look nice in a couple different colors, but for the sake of time, I'll just use the color adjustment and kind of play around with it. Might be nice to give him some nice white spots, but it's too bright, so let's play around with the different color shades. Could look very cool as blue. I'm fond of that kind of gray, green, brown, orange, but I think the weird mottled purple, kind of like an elephant seal skin that's been busted open, really suits this guy right now. So I'm kind of getting into the more detailed parts of the pattern. You know, you want to get some things on there that make it stand out, that help accentuate it, because right now you just sort of the same tone throughout the body. So if there's something really nice and dark, the bright spots didn't work, but highlighting some of these lightning bolt shapes across the pattern has a really cool effect. And properly placed, you can pull out different areas, different larger shapes, and kind of accentuate the flow that you're going for. The goal is to keep it cryptic, but at the same time keep it cohesive, you know, where one part flows into the next, at least in some capacity. So I'm going to address these fins, kind of get the same pattern going as the Bobbit Cat. Just the stripes looks a bit abrupt though. Gotta get the stripes on the dealy bobs, you know, harkening back to Bobbit's dealy bobs. So balance them out with stripes on the feet and the legs. And then soften the effect of the stripes on the fins by adding spots, but with much less opacity, so they kind of fade in. I like the way faded patterns work, so as like a secondary to a stronger pattern. And it's a good way to transition to different areas of the body and highlight different attributes, like those fins, like the legs. Pretty much putting final touches on it now. This is as detailed as it's going to get in this particular pass. Just adding some specularity because I want it to be, you know, kind of have that soft skin but slimy, you know, soft like the hagfish. I like that it feels very ocean oriented, so it fits along with the Bobbit Cat, you know, in that way. It does feel like a part of that world. It's a bit flashy and flamboyant like the Bobbit Cat, but in a different way, with brighter colors, different color contrast, more complicated pattern, less iridescence, but it makes up for that with its shininess. So that about wraps up that design. It's cool when you get to the end of a design session, then you look at all the work that you've done, you're like, oh, there's a lot of ideas there, there's some cool stuff. So thank you for tuning into this design process video, and thank you once again for your support for the Kickstarter. Again, I'm not taking this guy to final render like illustration wise. Just trying to get a basic understanding of how this thing is colored and textured and what kind of patterns it has.